The day I found myself arranging photo frames on a concrete wall, I knew something had gone terribly wrong with my life. The basement wasn't cold. Tom and Becky had installed heating when they moved in, but it was still a basement. Standing there, looking at 40 years of memories now confined to a space meant for storage and laundry, I realized I had become just another item they'd tucked away. The home Robert and I had built together, where we'd raised our son with so much love, had somehow transformed into a prison. That night, I made a decision that would shock everyone, including myself. I would sell the house, and I wouldn't tell a soul until it was done. Before we jump in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I had always been the kind of mother who put everyone else first. That's what we were taught, wasn't it? My generation of women learned to measure our worth by how well we cared for others. And I was good at it. Too good, perhaps. When Robert passed away 3 years ago, the emptiness nearly swallowed me whole. We'd been married for 42 years, and suddenly, at 65, I found myself alone in our 4-bedroom colonial in Oakridge. The house that had once buzzed with family dinners and holiday gatherings felt cavernous, my footsteps echoing against hardwood floors. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone in this big house," Tom said during one of his weekend visits, 6 months after the funeral. He sat at the kitchen island while I prepared the same Sunday roast I'd made every weekend since he was a boy. "All these stairs can't be good for you." "I'm perfectly fine, Tom," I said, checking the oven temperature. "A little arthritis doesn't make me an invalid." But he persisted, week after week. "Becky and I have been talking," he'd say. "Noah and Lily would love to have you around more, and we could help with the property taxes." The property taxes. As if I hadn't managed our household finances for decades. As if Robert hadn't left everything in perfect order, including a life insurance policy that Tom knew nothing about. The one that Robert had insisted I keep private. "Some things should stay between us, Ellie. You never know when you might need something that's just yours." When Tom brought up my unsafe living situation for the 3rd Sunday in a row, Becky chimed in from the living room. "We're actually thinking of moving. We need more space now that the kids are getting older, and this neighborhood has the best schools in the district." I caught the meaningful look that passed between them, but I pretended not to notice. After dinner, Tom walked the perimeter of the house, pointing out loose gutters and cracked paving stones as though I couldn't see them myself. That night, they left with a spare key, just in case of emergencies. 3 weeks later, they came with a moving truck. "We thought we'd surprise you," Becky exclaimed, directing movers toward the front door while Tom grinned beside her. "We sold our place last month. The market was too good to pass up." I stood frozen on my own front porch, watching as strangers carried furniture I didn't recognize into my home. "You're moving in here?" "It's perfect, Mom," Tom said, his arm wrapped around my shoulders as though he'd given me a gift. "You get to keep your home, but you won't be alone anymore. Plus, Lily can finally have her own room and Noah gets the den for his gaming setup." "But where will I—" "Oh, we've got it all figured out," Becky interrupted, her voice bright with enthusiasm. "We've been renovating the basement for weeks. It's like a little apartment now. You'll have your own bathroom, a kitchenette, everything." Everything except my dignity, apparently. That evening, I found myself sitting on the edge of a daybed, in what had once been our storage space. Yes, there was new drywall and laminate flooring. Yes, they'd installed recessed lighting and painted the walls a cheery yellow. But my window looked out at ground level, where all I could see were the neighbors' trash cans and the occasional passing feet. Upstairs, I heard the thump of footsteps and the scrape of furniture being rearranged, my furniture being moved, without my permission. My bedroom, where Robert and I had spent our last moments together, where I'd held his hand as he slipped away, was now the master suite for Tom and Becky. That night, I lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of my own home. The water pipes gurgled loudly behind the thin new walls. The ceiling creaked with every step, and somewhere above me, someone was sleeping in my bed. At first, I tried to make the best of it. I rearranged my new apartment as best I could, placing my reading chair near the small window for the best light. I displayed my favorite photographs, Robert and me on our honeymoon in Niagara Falls, Tom's college graduation, my retirement party from Oakridge Elementary after 30 years of teaching third grade. "See? It's cozy down here," Tom said during one of his increasingly rare visits to the basement. He glanced at his watch as he spoke. "We're thinking of putting in a dehumidifier. Becky read that moisture isn't good for seniors' lungs." "My lungs are fine," I replied. But he was already heading back upstairs, called by Becky to discuss paint samples for what had once been my living room. Within a month, the dynamic was clear. I had been relegated to the role of convenient basement grandmother, expected to be available for childcare but otherwise invisible. Becky would text me from upstairs. "Could you watch Lily after school? Today? Meeting running late." Or Tom would call from work. "Mom, Noah forgot his science project. Could you drop it off at school?" I always said yes, because that's what mothers do, isn't it? But slowly, something inside me began to shift. Perhaps it was the afternoon I overheard Becky giving a house tour to her parents. "And we kept all the original hardwood," she was saying as they walked. "Across the dining room floor that Robert and I had refinished ourselves our first year of marriage. The previous owners took good care of the place." Previous owners, as if I were already gone. "And what about Eleanor?" I heard Patricia, Becky's mother, ask. "Is she comfortable down there?" "Oh, she's fine," Becky replied. "She's lucky." "Really? Most people her age have to move to those depressing senior apartments. This way, we handle all the maintenance, and she gets to stay in her home." "Well, technically it's our home now, but you know what I mean." Technically was an interesting word choice, considering I'd never signed a single document transferring ownership. Richard, Becky's father, lowered his voice, but not enough. "Smart move, getting in before she needed to sell. Property values in this neighborhood are only going up. You've set yourselves up nicely for the future." Their future, planned on? The foundation of my past. The next day, I found a note taped to the small refrigerator in my basement kitchenette. "Mom, we're having the Johnsons over for dinner Saturday. Could you make your lasagna? Becky's swamped with work. Thanks." I stared at that sticky note for a long time. Tom had his father's handwriting, the same looping I, the same slant to the letters. But Robert would never have treated anyone this way, least of all me. He'd valued my happiness above everything else. "Promise me you'll have a good life without me, Ellie," he'd said in those final weeks. "Promise me you won't let yourself disappear." Yet here I was, disappearing a little more each day. That afternoon, instead of starting the lasagna, I walked to the public library. I needed to think somewhere that wasn't underground, somewhere with high ceilings and natural light. The walk was longer than I remembered. I hadn't been out much since the move, and my knees ached by the time I arrived. The library had always been one of my favorite places in Oakridge. As a teacher, I'd brought classes here for story hour, watching young faces light up as the librarians performed voices for each character. Now, I settled into a comfortable chair by the window, letting the sunlight warm my face. "Eleanor? Eleanor Martinez, is that you?" I looked up to see Marcus Wilson, owner of the small bookstore where I'd bought my classroom supplies for years. He was carrying a stack of books and smiling broadly. "I haven't seen you in ages," he said, setting his books down at the table beside me. "How have you been since Robert passed? I've missed your recommendations. You always knew exactly which mysteries were worth reading." Something about his genuine interest brought a lump to my throat. When was the last time someone had asked about me, rather than what I could do for them? I'm managing, I said finally. Though things have changed recently, my son and his family moved in with me. Well, not exactly with me. They're upstairs, and I'm in the basement now. I hadn't meant to say that last part. It slipped out, hanging in the air between us. Marcus's smile faded. They moved you to the basement? Of your own home? Put that way, it sounded so much worse, and yet so much clearer. It's been renovated, I said quickly, feeling a strange urge to defend them. It has its own bathroom and everything. Eleanor, Marcus said gently. That's not right. Robert wouldn't have wanted that for you. No, he wouldn't have. And suddenly I couldn't pretend anymore. They're waiting for me to die, I whispered, speaking aloud the thought that had been forming in the back of my mind for weeks. They've planned their future around inheriting my house, and they don't want to wait anymore. Marcus sat with me as I talked, really talked, for the first time in months. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. He didn't offer solutions or platitudes, just listened as I described how quickly I'd been sidelined in my own life. You know, he said when I finally fell silent, my sister went through something similar with her daughter. Moved into help, then gradually took over. It took her 2 years to work up the courage to leave. Leave? The word felt foreign in my mouth. But where would I go? This is my home. Is it? Marcus asked. Or has it become their home, with you as a tenant? I didn't have an answer for that. When I returned to the house that evening, Tom was waiting at the door. Where have you been? He demanded. We were worried. You didn't answer your phone. I hadn't even realized my phone was in my purse, silenced from my library visit. I went for a walk, I said, moving past him toward the basement door. I needed some fresh air. Mom, you can't just disappear like that. What if something had happened to you? His concern would have touched me once. Now I wondered how much of it was genuine and how much was fear of losing his convenient childcare arrangement. I'm fine, Tom. I'm not an invalid, remember? Of course not, he backpedaled. But at your age, my age, I repeated. I'm 68, not 98. Your father was still running marathons at my age. An uncomfortable silence fell between us. Robert had always been the buffer in our relationship, the translator who helped us understand each other. Without him, we'd lost that connection. Anyway, Tom said, clearing his throat. Becky was wondering about that lasagna for Saturday. I'll handle it, I said, walking down the basement steps. That night I couldn't sleep. The house made its usual noises, the furnace kicking on, the ice maker dropping cubes, the faint sound of Tom's snoring that reminded me so much of his father. But now they felt like the sounds of strangers, intruders. I got up and opened the small fireproof box where I kept important documents. Inside was the folder Robert had prepared during his last months, copies of our will, insurance policies, bank accounts. Everything neatly labeled in his methodical way. The deed to the house was there too, still solely in my name. Tom had never asked about it, had simply assumed he'd inherit eventually. And why wouldn't he? That had always been the plan. But plans change. People change. I thought about what Marcus had said. Is it still your home? The answer was becoming clearer by the minute. The next morning, instead of preparing breakfast for Noah and Lily as usual, I got dressed in my best slacks and blouse and walked to the bus stop. I had an appointment to keep, one I'd made from the library the day before. Mrs. Martinez? The real estate agent stood as I entered her office. I'm Janet Kim. We spoke on the phone yesterday. Yes, I said, sitting down across from her desk. I'd like to know what my house is worth, and how quickly it could be sold. Janet's eyebrows rose slightly. Of course. But, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you mention that your son and his family are currently living there? They are, without a lease or any legal arrangement. I placed the deed on her desk. The house is solely in my name, my late husband, and I paid off the mortgage 15 years ago. Understanding dawned in her eyes. I see. Well, in that case, let me tell you about the current market in Oakridge. It's quite favorable for sellers right now. By the time I left Janet's office 2 hours later, I had a plan. The house, my house, was worth considerably more than I'd imagined. Oakridge had become one of the most desirable suburbs in the Chicago area, with its excellent schools and proximity to the city. 3-bedroom colonials on corner lots simply didn't come on the market often. I could sell quickly, Janet assured me, and for enough to secure my future anywhere I chose. As I walked back from the bus stop that afternoon, I saw my home through new eyes. Not as the place where my memories lived, but as an asset that could fund my freedom. The weeping cherry tree Robert and I had planted on our 10th anniversary was in full bloom, pink petals carpeting the lawn. I stopped to touch its trunk, feeling the rough bark under my fingers. I'm sorry, I whispered, but I think it's time for me to go. That evening, as I prepared the lasagna Tom had requested, I heard them all upstairs. Noah playing video games too loudly, Lily practicing her recorder off-key, Becky on a work call pacing back and forth above my head, and Tom watching sports with the volume turned high. The sounds of a family living their life, building their memories. Without me. I layered noodles and sauce with mechanical precision, my mind elsewhere. I was already calculating, planning. The real estate agent had suggested I view properties before listing the house to ensure I had somewhere to go when it sold. Looking at condos doesn't commit you to anything, Janet had said. But it might help make this real for you. Real. Yes, that's what I needed. To make a new reality for myself, one where I wasn't relegated to the margins of my own life. As I slid the lasagna into the oven, I made another decision. I wouldn't tell them until everything was finalized. No discussions, no family meetings where my concerns would be dismissed as confusion or ingratitude. No chance for them to talk me out of it or, worse, try to claim I was incompetent to make my own decisions. This would be my move, on my terms. The next day, when Becky texted asking me to pick up Lily from her dance class, I replied that I had an appointment. It wasn't a lie. I was meeting Janet to look at properties in Lakeshore Village, a community 30 minutes away that catered to active seniors. Can't you reschedule? Becky texted back immediately. I have a client meeting. I can't miss. I'm sorry, but no, I wrote, feeling a strange thrill at those simple words of refusal. You'll need to make other arrangements. My phone buzzed repeatedly after that, but I turned it off. For the first time in months, maybe years, I was putting myself first. Lakeshore Village wasn't what I expected. Instead of the institutional feel I'd feared, I found an attractive community of condos and townhomes built around a small lake. The units were modern and bright, with wide doorways and accessible features that didn't scream, "Old people live here." Most of our residents are downsizing from family homes, the community manager explained as she showed me a 2-bedroom condo with a balcony overlooking the water. They want less maintenance but aren't ready for assisted living. The condo was smaller than I was used to, but everything about it felt open and airy, the opposite of my basement apartment. Large windows let in abundant natural light. The kitchen was compact but efficiently designed, and best of all, there was a community garden where residents could have their own plots. My husband and I always gardened together, I told the manager. I've missed having my hands in the soil. We have several avid gardeners here, she replied. They're always looking for new members for their club. As we walked the grounds, I noticed people my age and older chatting on benches, walking, dogs, even playing pickleball on a nearby court. They looked happy, engaged with life. I could be one of them, I realized. Not Eleanor the basement grandmother, but Eleanor the gardener. Eleanor the book club member. Eleanor the woman with her own life. When I returned to the house that evening, Tom was waiting again, his expression thunderous. Becky had to leave work early to pick up Lily, he said accusingly. What was so important that you couldn't help out? I hung my sweater in the hall closet before answering. I had an appointment. What kind of appointment? Are you sick? Is that what this is about? The concern in his voice sounded genuine, and for a moment, I glimpsed my little boy again. The one who'd cried when I had pneumonia, who'd brought me dandelions from the yard as get-well presents. I'm not sick, Tom, I said gently. I just had something I needed to do. Well, next time, let us know in advance. We rely on you for the kids. And there it was again. Their needs, their schedules, their convenience. Tom, I said carefully, I'm your mother, not your employee. I don't need to submit time-off requests. His face reddened. That's not what I meant. But we're a family. We help each other. Help each other. Was that what this arrangement was? It didn't feel like mutual aid to me. Yes, we are family, I agreed. Which is why I made that lasagna everyone's enjoying tonight, despite having other things to do. I walked past him to the basement door, suddenly too tired for further discussion. But as I reached for the handle, he spoke again. Mom, I don't know what's gotten into you lately, but Becky and I are getting concerned. You seem different, distracted. I turned back to face my son, this man who looked so much like his father but had somehow missed Robert's most essential lessons about respect and reciprocity. People change, Tom, I said simply. Even mothers. As I descended the stairs to my basement room, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time, the quiet satisfaction of standing my ground. It wasn't anger or resentment driving me anymore, but something cleaner, more powerful. Self-respect. That night, I began sorting through my possessions, mentally cataloging what I would take and what I could leave behind. The cherry bedroom, set Robert and I had purchased for our 10th anniversary, too large for a condo. The photo albums and scrapbooks from Tom's childhood, those would come with me. My gardening tools, my books, my mother's china. I made lists, preparing. In the morning, I had another appointment, this time with my bank. The manager, a young woman named Sophia who had handled Robert's estate after his passing, greeted me warmly. Mrs. Martinez, what can I do for you today? I'm selling my house, I said, the words feeling more real each time I spoke them. And I'll need to arrange for the proceeds to be properly managed. Sophia's professionalism didn't waver, though I could see surprise in her eyes. Of course. Let's discuss your options. By the end of our meeting, I had a clear financial plan. The proceeds from the house would be more than enough to purchase a condo outright, with plenty left for a comfortable retirement. Robert's life insurance policy, which I'd barely touched, provided additional security. You're in excellent financial shape, Mrs. Martinez, Sophia concluded. Much better than most of our clients your age. Your age. There it was again, but this time it didn't feel like a limitation. Instead, it was simply a fact, one that I was finally addressing on my own terms. As I left the bank, my phone rang. It was Janet, the real estate agent. Eleanor? Great news. If you're ready to move quickly, I have potential buyers who want to view the property this weekend. They're relocating for work and need to find something immediately. My heart raced. This weekend? But my family would need to be out during the showing, yes, Janet confirmed. I understand that might be complicated given your situation. We could wait for a better time. I thought about the condo at Lakeshore Village, about the garden plots and the book club and the sense of possibility I'd felt there. I thought about the basement room where I'd spend another night if I delayed. No, I said firmly. This weekend is perfect. Can we arrange a private viewing while my son and his family are out? Absolutely. They typically do a Saturday morning, showing with minimal disruption. Saturday morning, I repeated. My son and his wife take the children to sports activities then. The house will be empty from 9 until at least noon. That settled, I hung up and took a deep breath. The wheels were in motion now. There was no going back. Saturday morning arrived with perfect spring weather. Tom and Becky hustled the children through breakfast, barely acknowledging me as they grabbed equipment bags and water bottles. We'll be back around 12:30, Tom called over his shoulder. Noah has soccer until 11, then Lily has her dance recital rehearsal. Take your time, I replied, hiding the tremble in my voice. I'll be here. As soon as their car pulled away, I texted Janet. The house is empty. You can bring the buyers now. 20 minutes later, a luxury SUV pulled into the driveway. Janet emerged with a professional-looking couple in their 40s. Not unlike Tom and Becky, I realized with irony. Eleanor, this is Dr. and Dr. Chen. Janet introduced us at the door. They're very excited to see your beautiful home. The tour went better than I could have hoped. The Chens loved the original details Robert and I had preserved, the spacious backyard, even the weeping cherry tree. Our daughter would love climbing that, Dr. Chen, the wife, remarked. We have an 8-year-old who's part monkey, I swear. They spent extra time in the kitchen, admiring the renovations Robert and I had completed 5 years ago. The previous owners clearly took pride in this home, Dr. Chen, the husband, commented. I bit my tongue. I was still the owner, not previous. But soon enough, that would be true. Would you like to see the basement? Janet asked, glancing at me. We'd discussed whether to show it, given its current state as my living quarters. Actually, I said, stepping forward, the basement has been recently renovated as a separate apartment. It has its own entrance from the side yard, which could be perfect for guests or perhaps a home office. I led them down the stairs, feeling strangely detached as they examined what had been my prison for months. Dr. Chen, the wife, noted the new bathroom fixtures approvingly. Dr. Chen, the husband, commented on the potential for a music room. They didn't need to know that someone currently slept here, that someone's life had been condensed to these few hundred square feet. After the Chens left, Janet stayed behind, her expression hopeful. They're very interested, she said. I wouldn't be surprised if we receive an offer today. Are you sure you're ready for this? Was I ready? To reclaim my life, to stand on my own terms, to disappoint the people who had disappointed me so thoroughly. I'm ready, I said. More than ready. Sure enough, the offer came through before Tom and family returned home. It was more than Janet's, suggested asking price. The Chens were eager to avoid a bidding war in the competitive market. They'd like to close in 30 days, Janet explained. Is that timeline acceptable? 30 days. 1 month to untangle myself from this house, to find the courage to confront my son, to start again at 68. It's perfect, I said, signing the acceptance form. Absolutely perfect. I spent the afternoon in a state of nervous anticipation, washing dishes that didn't need washing, reorganizing books that were already alphabetized. Every sound from outside made me jump. A car door, voices on the sidewalk, certain it was Tom and his family returning early to catch me in the act of selling their inheritance out from under them. But they arrived precisely when expected, bursting through the front door in a flurry of sports equipment and weekend plans. Noah scored 2 goals today, Tom announced, dropping his keys in the bowl by the door, the same bowl that had held Robert's keys for 40 years. The coach says he might make the travel team next season. That's wonderful, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. How was the dance rehearsal, Lily? My granddaughter twirled across the living room in demonstration, narrowly missing the coffee table. Miss Shannon says I'm the best flower in the whole recital. Of course you are, I said, genuinely warmed by her enthusiasm despite everything. Else? Becky swept in last, arms full of grocery bags. I picked up steaks for dinner, she announced. Tom's parents are stopping by later. I told them you'd make that potato salad they like. Not a question, not even a request, simply an assumption that I was available, willing, and at their disposal. Any other day, I would have nodded and headed for the kitchen. Today, something shifted. Actually, I said, I have plans this evening. Becky paused halfway to the kitchen, turning back with a bemused expression. Plans? On Saturday night? The surprise in her voice stung. Was it so unthinkable that I might have a life beyond their needs? Yes, I replied simply. I'm meeting a friend for dinner. A friend? Tom appeared from the hallway where he'd been hanging up jackets. What friend? I thought of Marcus, who'd been so understanding, at the library. But the truth was, I hadn't made any actual plans yet. Helen, I said, naming my former teaching colleague who I hadn't seen in months. We're meeting at Green Street Cafe at 6. The lie slipped out easily, surprising me. I'd never been a good liar. Robert could always tell when I was bending. The truth, even about small things like birthday surprises. But Tom just looked confused. Since when do you go out to dinner, and who's watching the kids? Mom, you know we were counting on you tonight. I'm watching them, Becky interjected, her tone clipped. Your parents will be here by 7. We'll be fine. There was a moment of uncomfortable silence, broken only by the sounds of Noah's video game starting up in the living room. Well, I should get ready, I said, moving toward the basement door. Mom, Tom called after me. Is everything okay? You've been acting strange lately. I paused, one hand on the doorframe. Everything's fine, I assured him. I'm just keeping a dinner date. Downstairs, I sat on the edge of my bed and called Helen. When she answered, I spoke without preamble. Helen, it's Eleanor. I need a tremendous favor. Can you meet me for dinner in an hour at Green Street Cafe? I'll explain everything when I see you. There was a pause, then Helen's warm, familiar laugh. Eleanor Martinez, this is the most interesting phone call I've had all month. Of course I'll meet you. I want to hear whatever story makes you sound this mysterious. Relief flooded through me. I hadn't realized until that moment how desperately I needed an ally. Someone outside the situation who knew me before I became the convenient basement grandmother. I dressed with unusual care that evening, choosing a blue blouse that Robert had always loved and the pearl earrings he'd given me for our 30th anniversary. Looking in the mirror, I saw glimpses of my younger self. The woman who had walked into Oakridge Elementary each morning with purpose and confidence, who had stood in front of hundreds of children over the years and helped shape their futures. When had I forgotten her? I emerged from the basement to find Tom's in-laws, Richard and Patricia Davis, already in the living room. Patricia was fussing over Lily's hair while Richard and Tom discussed some sporting event on the television. Becky was in the kitchen, looking harried as she sorted through the refrigerator. Oh good, you're up, she said when she spotted me. Could you start the potatoes before you go? I can't find your recipe anywhere. I'm sorry, but I need to leave now to meet Helen, I replied, reaching for my purse by the door. I'm running late as it is. Becky's expression tightened, but Richard and Patricia were looking forward to your potato salad. I'm sure they'll enjoy whatever you make. Just as much, I said, surprised by the firmness in my voice. I'll be back later tonight. Don't wait up. As I walked out the front door, my front door, I felt the weight of their stares on my back. But for the first time in months, I was walking taller. Green Street Cafe was busy for a Saturday evening. Its outdoor patio filled with couples and families enjoying the mild spring weather. Helen was already at a corner table, waving enthusiastically when she spotted me. "Eleanor!" she exclaimed, standing to embrace me. "You look wonderful. It's been too long." As we settled into our seats, Helen studied me with the shrewd gaze that had made her such an effective fifth-grade teacher. "Now," she said, "tell me what's going on, and don't leave anything out." The story poured out of me over appetizers and wine. How Tom and Becky had moved in, how quickly I'd been relegated to the basement, how they clearly expected to inherit the house, and finally, how I'd secretly arranged to sell it. The buyers made an offer today, I concluded, above asking price, 30-day closing. Helen sat back, wine glass forgotten in her hand. "Eleanor Martinez," she said slowly, "I am in absolute awe. They'll never see it coming, will they?" "That's the plan." I took a sip of my wine, still marveling at my own audacity. "I haven't figured out exactly how or when to tell them. I'm thinking maybe a week before closing, when it's too late for them to interfere." "And where will you go?" I told her about Lakeshore Village, about the garden plots and the condo overlooking the water. "It sounds perfect for you," Helen said warmly. "But are you sure you're ready to leave the house? All those memories with Robert?" The question gave me pause. Was I ready? The house held 40 years of my life with Robert, every corner, filled with his presence. "I think," I said slowly, "that Robert is with me wherever I go. But in that house right now, I don't even feel like myself anymore. How can I honor his memory if I've disappeared?" Helen reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "He would be so proud of you, Eleanor, standing up for yourself like this." "Would he?" I wondered aloud. "Or would he think I'm being selfish, abandoning our son?" "Tom is 42 years old," Helen pointed out dryly, "with a successful career and a family of his own. He'll survive without your free childcare and potato salad." Put that way, it did seem absurd to worry. Yet the guilt lingered, a mother's perpetual shadow. "You haven't abandoned anyone," Helen continued, more gently now. "They pushed you into a basement and expected gratitude. Robert would never have allowed that, and you know it." She was right. Robert had always been my fiercest defender, stepping in when I was too accommodating for my own good. If he were here, Tom would never have dared suggest such an arrangement. Our conversation shifted to lighter topics as the evening progressed. Former students we'd kept track of, mutual friends from the school, Helen's new hobby of birdwatching. For hours, I wasn't mom or grandma or the previous owner. I was just Eleanor, enjoying dinner with a friend. When I finally returned home shortly after 10, the house was quiet except for the muted sound of the television from the master bedroom, my old bedroom. I slipped down to the basement unnoticed, feeling oddly like a teenager sneaking in past curfew rather than the homeowner returning to her own property. But soon, I reminded myself as I got ready for bed, I wouldn't be sneaking around anymore. Soon, I would be starting over, on my terms. The following week passed in a blur of quiet preparations. I sorted through my possessions during the day, while everyone was out, deciding what to keep and what to let go. Each evening, I carried a small bag of important papers or irreplaceable mementos to my car, stashing them in the trunk for safekeeping. I met with Sophia at the bank again to arrange for the proceeds from the house sale to be properly managed. I signed the final paperwork for the condo at Lakeshore Village, using a portion of Robert's life insurance money for the down payment. "The rest will be paid in full once your house closes," the sales manager assured me. "You can move in as early as next week if you'd like." Next week. The timeline was rushing forward faster than I'd anticipated. "I'd like that," I said, feeling both terrified and exhilarated. "Very much." Through it all, I maintained my usual routines at home, preparing breakfast for the children, handling the laundry, keeping the house tidy. To their credit, Tom and Becky seemed to notice something was different. They exchanged concerned glances when they thought I wasn't looking, and once I overheard Tom on the phone with someone discussing changes in elderly behavior patterns. The condescension might have angered me once. Now it merely strengthened my resolve. On Wednesday evening, exactly 11 days after accepting the Chen's offer, I received an email from Janet. Inspection completed, all contingencies removed. We're clear to close on schedule. It was time to tell them. I considered various approaches: a family meeting, individual conversations, even a letter left on the kitchen counter. In the end, I decided on dinner. One last meal together in the dining room where we'd celebrated so many birthdays, holidays, and milestones. The next morning, I texted Tom and Becky. I'd like to make a special dinner tonight. Just the four of us. Could you arrange for the children to visit friends? Becky replied almost immediately. Is everything okay? Special dinner on a Thursday seems odd. Everything is fine, I wrote back. I just want to talk to you both about something important. I spent the afternoon preparing Robert's favorite meal: roast beef with Yorkshire pudding, roasted vegetables, and homemade rolls. It seemed fitting somehow, as if his presence might make this easier. Smells amazing in here, Tom commented when he came home from work. What's the occasion? No occasion, I replied, sliding the rolls into the oven. Just thought it would be nice to have a good meal together. Becky arrived half an hour later, looking harried. The Wilsons can only keep Lily until 8, she announced, dropping her briefcase on the counter. And Noah's at Jake's house, but we need to pick him up by 9. That's fine, I assured her. This won't take long. Her eyebrows rose. This? So there is something going on. Let's talk over dinner, I suggested, turning back to the stove. It's almost ready. We gathered around the dining table, the same table where Robert and I had played board games with Tom as a child, where we'd helped him with his homework, where we'd discussed colleges and careers and his engagement to Becky. So many important conversations had happened at this table. This would be the last. This looks fantastic, Mom, Tom said, serving himself generously. You didn't have to go to all this trouble. It's no trouble, I replied. I wanted to do something special before I move out. The words hung in the air as Tom and Becky froze, forks halfway to their mouths. Move out? Tom repeated finally. What are you talking about? I took a deep breath. I've bought a condo at Lakeshore Village. I'll be moving there next week. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Another piece I'd have to decide whether to take or leave behind. But why? Becky asked, her voice unnaturally high. I thought the whole point of us moving in was so you wouldn't have to leave your home. This hasn't felt like my home since I moved to the basement, I said quietly. Tom's face flushed. The basement was your idea, Mom. You said you wanted your own space, remember? Did I? Perhaps in some twisted version of events, I'd agreed to the arrangement to avoid conflict, but I certainly hadn't suggested it. Regardless, I continued, I've made my decision. The condo is lovely. It has a balcony overlooking the lake, and there's a community garden where I can grow tomatoes again. But what about the kids? Becky demanded. They need you here. And what about the house? You can't just walk away from the home Dad built for us. Actually, I said, setting down my fork, that brings me to the other thing I needed to tell you. I've sold the house. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the grandfather clock seemed to hold its breath. You what? Tom's voice was dangerously quiet. I've sold the house, I repeated. To a lovely couple, both doctors. They have an 8-year-old daughter who will love climbing the cherry tree in the backyard. You can't do that, Becky spluttered. We live here now. We have rights. You don't, actually, I said, maintaining a calm I didn't entirely feel. Your names aren't on the deed, And we never established a formal rental agreement. Legally, the house is mine to sell. Tom pushed back from the table, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. This is insane. You're not thinking clearly, Mom. You can't just sell a house out from under your own family. The sale closes in 19 days, I continued, ignoring his outburst. The new owners will take possession immediately after. I wanted to give you enough notice to find a new place. 3 weeks? Becky's voice rose to a near shriek. You expect us to find a house in 3 weeks? In this market? With 2 children in school? I met her gaze steadily. You managed to sell your previous home and move in here within a month. I have faith in your abilities. Tom began pacing, running his hands through his hair in a gesture so reminiscent of Robert that my heart ached despite everything. This isn't right, Mom. Dad would never have wanted this. The house was supposed to stay in the family. We were supposed to inherit it someday. Someday, I repeated. Not now. Not while I'm still very much alive and capable of making my own decisions. Are you, though? Tom turned to face me, his expression hardening. Because this doesn't sound like you at all. This sounds like someone who's confused, maybe even... Don't, I warned, my voice sharper than I'd intended. Don't suggest I'm incompetent just because I'm doing something you don't like. Then explain it to us, Becky pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. Why now? Why like this? If you weren't happy with the arrangement, why didn't you say something? I looked at her incredulously. Would you have listened? When have either of you asked what I wanted since you moved in? When have you treated me as anything other than a convenient basement-dwelling caretaker? That's not fair, Tom protested. We gave you your own space, your own bathroom, your own kitchenette. In the basement, I finished for him. While you took over the home I built with your father, moved my things without asking, and treated me like a tenant in my own house. We were trying to help you, Becky insisted. You were all alone after Robert died. We thought you'd be grateful for the company, for being able to see the kids every day. Grateful, I repeated. Yes, that's exactly what I was supposed to be, wasn't it? Grateful for being pushed aside. Grateful for being available whenever you needed childcare. Grateful for being allowed to stay in the house I've owned for 40 years. Tom collapsed back into his chair, looking stunned. Is that really how you see it? That we've been taking advantage of you? Haven't you? No one spoke for several long moments. The food grew cold on our plates, the special dinner forgotten in the weight of revelations. What if we change things? Tom finally asked, his high voice smaller now. What if we swap, you take the master bedroom back and we move downstairs? Or we could convert the dining room into a main floor bedroom for you. There has to be a solution that doesn't involve selling the house. For a fleeting moment, I considered it. Perhaps things could be different. Perhaps we could find a new arrangement that respected my position in the household. But then I remembered the Chen's daughter, who would climb the cherry tree. I remembered the condo at Lakeshore Village with its view of the water and its promise of a fresh start. I remembered the garden plots waiting for my tomato plants. The house is sold, I said firmly. The decision is made. You can still back out, Becky argued. Pay a penalty, break the contract, whatever it takes. You can't do this to us, to the children. It's cruel. Cruel? I shook my head slowly. Was it cruel when you moved me to the basement of my own home? Was it cruel when you referred to me as the previous owner while giving your parents a tour? Was it cruel when you made plans for your future based on my death? Becky flinched, as if I'd slapped her. I never said anything about your death. You didn't have to. It was implied in every decision, every assumption about your house, every conversation about when the house is yours. Tom placed his head in his hands. Mom, please, this is our home now, too. The kids are settled in school. We've made renovations. We've put down roots here. You can't just uproot all of that because you're feeling slighted. Slighted? I repeated, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. Is that what you think this is about? Hurt feelings? Then what is it about? He demanded. Revenge? Punishment? Making us suffer because you weren't getting enough attention? The accusation stung, but I took a deep breath before responding. It's about respect, Tom. It's about having the agency to make my own decisions. About my own life and property. It's about remembering who I am beyond being your mother and the children's grandmother. And who is that exactly? Becky asked, her tone somewhere between bitter and genuinely curious. Because the Eleanor I thought I knew would never turn her back on family like this. I'm still figuring that out, I admitted, but I know I'm someone who deserves better than a basement. The doorbell rang, interrupting our standoff. Tom went to answer it, his movements stiff with anger. A moment later, he returned with a middle-aged couple I didn't recognize. Mom, he said coldly. These people say they're here to measure for window treatments. Care to explain? The Chens stood awkwardly in the dining room doorway, looking uncomfortable. We're so sorry to intrude, Dr. Chen, the wife, said quickly. The agent said it would be okay to stop by this evening. We can come back another time. I rose from my chair, smoothing my skirt. It's fine, I assured them. You're not intruding. This is Dr. and Dr. Chen, I explained to Tom and Becky. They're the new owners. The look on Tom's face shifted from disbelief to betrayal. You invited them here tonight? They're on a tight schedule with their relocation, I explained, and I thought it might be good for you to meet them, to know who will be caring for the house next. Unbelievable, Becky muttered, pushing away from the table. I can't do this right now. She stormed out of the room, brushing past the Chens without acknowledging them. Tom remained frozen in place, his expression unreadable. Perhaps we should come back another time, Dr. Chen, the husband, suggested, clearly sensing the tension. No need, I said, gesturing for them to enter. Let me show you the windows you were asking about. The living room gets beautiful morning light. I guided them through the house, pointing out features and answering questions while acutely aware of Tom following several paces behind, silent and seething. The Chens, to their credit, maintained polite professionalism despite the obvious awkwardness of the situation. When they finally left 45 minutes later, promising to return with their contractor next week, Tom confronted me in the foyer. How could you do this? He demanded, his voice breaking. Parade those strangers through our home, showing off Dad's woodwork, Mom's garden, like none of it matters to you anymore? It matters, I said softly. It will always matter, but the memories aren't in the walls, Tom. They're in here. I touched my heart gently, and I'll take them with me wherever I go. This isn't right, he insisted, though some of the fight seemed to have gone out of him. There has to be another way. There isn't, I said firmly. The decision is made. That night, alone in my basement room, I allowed myself to cry for the first time since the whole process began. Not out of regret. I remained certain of my choice, but out of grief for the family I'd thought we were, for the son who couldn't see what had been done to me, for the relationship that might never recover from this rupture. The next morning, I woke to unusual silence from upstairs. No thumping footsteps, no children's voices, no kitchen sounds. When I finally ventured up to make coffee, I found a note on the counter in Tom's handwriting. Staying at Becky's parents' house until we figure things out. We'll be back tomorrow to start packing. The house felt eerily empty without them, a preview of what was to come once I moved out as well. I wandered from room to room, touching familiar surfaces, the banister Robert had refinished by hand, the window seat where I'd read stories to Tom, the kitchen counters where I'd taught him to bake cookies. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I doing the right thing? Was I throwing away my last connection to Robert, to our life together? As if in answer, my phone chimed with a text from Janet. Just checking in. The closing is on track for the 12th. How are you holding up? I looked around the empty house one more time, then typed my reply. I'm ready for the next chapter. Later that day, I called Marcus. We'd been meeting regularly for coffee since our first encounter at the library, and he'd become a trusted sounding board during this transition. They didn't take it well, I told him, recounting the previous night's confrontation. Did you expect them to? He asked gently. No, I admitted. But I hoped. I don't know what I hoped. That they might understand? That they might see it from my perspective? They're in shock, Marcus suggested. Give them time. Right now, they're only seeing what they're losing, not what you've gained. And what have I gained exactly? Your dignity, he said simply. Your independence. Your right to choose your own path. Put that way, it seemed worth whatever price I might have to pay in family discord. I'm meeting with a moving company tomorrow, I told him. They'll pack and move everything I'm taking with me. The rest will go to charity or stay with the house. Do you need help sorting through things? He offered. My sister found it helpful to have someone objective when she was downsizing. His kindness brought unexpected tears to my eyes. That would be wonderful, I managed to say. There's so much history in this house, so many decisions to make. I'll be there first thing tomorrow, he promised. We'll tackle it together. When I hung up, I felt lighter somehow. Perhaps it was knowing I had support during this difficult transition. Perhaps it was simply the relief of having my decision out in the open at last. The house around me was still the same walls that had watched Tom grow from infant to man, the same rooms where Robert and I had built our life together. But something fundamental had shifted inside me. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, I was prioritizing my own needs, my own future. It wasn't selfishness, I decided. It was self-preservation. And at 68, I was finally learning that the two were not the same thing at all. I spent the afternoon making lists. What to take, what to leave, what to give away. When I reached Robert's things, I hesitated. We'd left his clothes untouched after his death, his reading glasses still on the bedside table, his favorite coffee, mug in the cabinet. Moving would mean finally confronting these remnants, deciding which physical reminders of him would come with me to my new life. In the master bedroom closet, now filled with Tom and Becky's clothes, I found a small section of Robert's suits still hanging at the back. I ran my fingers over the familiar fabrics, remembering how handsome he'd looked in each one. Would he understand what I was doing? Would he approve? I miss you, I whispered to the empty room. I wish you were here to tell me I'm doing the right thing. As if in answer, my gaze fell on a small wooden box on the high shelf. Robert's keepsake. Box. The one where he'd kept ticket stubs from our dates, dried flowers from anniversaries, small mementos from our life together. I reached for it, surprised that Tom and Becky had left it undisturbed. Inside, beneath the expected souvenirs, I found an envelope addressed to me in Robert's handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened it to find a letter dated just weeks before his death. My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, it means you're finally cleaning out my things. Knowing you, it's probably been months or even years since I've been gone. You always were sentimental about holding on to the past. But here's what I want you to know. The past is just memory. The future, even without me, is still yours to create. Don't stay frozen in time out of loyalty to what we had. Don't let our home become a museum to a life that's ended. Whatever you decide to do, sell the house, travel the world, adopt 17 cats, know that you have my blessing. The only promise I want you to keep is the one about living a good life without me. All my love, always, Robert. I clutched the letter to my chest, tears flowing freely now. Even from beyond, Robert understood what I needed better than my own son did. He'd given me permission to move forward, to remake my life without him. In that moment, any lingering doubt vanished. I was doing exactly what Robert would have wanted, choosing life, choosing myself, refusing to disappear into the background of someone else's story. When Tom and Becky returned the next day, subdued and red-eyed, I met them with newfound certainty. "I've arranged for movers to come next Tuesday," I told them. "I'll be taking only what fits in the condo. You're welcome to anything I leave behind, or you can sell it with the house." "So this is really happening," Tom said flatly. "You're really going through with it?" "Yes," I replied simply. "I am." We stood in awkward silence for a moment, the gulf between us seemingly unbridgeable. "Fine," he said finally. "We've found an apartment we can lease short-term while we look for a house. We'll be out by the closing date." "Thank you," I said, genuinely relieved that they weren't going to fight me further. "Don't thank me," he replied bitterly. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because I don't have a choice." As they headed upstairs to begin packing, Becky paused on the landing. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I'm sorry if we made you feel less than welcome in your own home. That was never our intention." It wasn't exactly an admission of wrongdoing, but it was something. A small acknowledgement that perhaps they hadn't handled things as well as they might have. "I know," I said, because in my heart, I did. They hadn't acted out of malice, just selfishness and convenience. They'd seen an opportunity and taken it, never stopping to consider how it might feel from my perspective. The next 2 weeks passed, in a whirlwind of boxes and decisions. Marcus came daily, helping me sort through 40 years of accumulation with patience and insight. "Keep only what brings you joy or serves a purpose in your new life," he advised, quoting some organizational guru he'd read. "The rest is just weight holding you back." I discovered he was right. With each box packed or discarded, I felt lighter, more mobile, more ready for whatever came next. Tom and Becky worked around us, packing their own belongings with minimal interaction. The children, confused by the sudden upheaval, asked questions I wasn't equipped to answer. "Why are we moving, Grandma?" Lily wanted to know. "Don't you like living with us anymore?" "It's not about liking or not liking," I tried to explain. "Sometimes adults need different things as they get older. I need a place that's just for me, and your mom and dad need a place that's just for your family." "But we're your family too," Noah pointed out with a child's perfect logic. "Yes," I agreed, hugging him close. "And we always will be, no matter where we live." I wasn't sure if he believed me. I wasn't entirely sure if I believed myself. But I hoped that with time, the rift might heal. That Tom might come to understand why I'd needed to make this stand. Why I'd chosen my independence over the comfort of the familiar. 3 days before the closing, I stood in my nearly empty basement room, surveying what remained. Most of my possessions were already at the condo, arranged in my new space with Marcus's helpful eye for design. What little was left would go in my car tomorrow for the final trip. The house above me was similarly emptied, Tom and Becky having moved most of their things to their temporary apartment. They'd be back tomorrow for the last load, and then that would be it. The end of the Martinez family's time in this house. I sat on the edge of the bare mattress, feeling strangely peaceful. The anger that had driven my decision had faded, replaced by a quiet certainty that I was doing what was right for me. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect and the desire for a life that was truly mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "How's it going over there? Need help with anything tomorrow?" I smiled at his thoughtfulness. "All under control," I replied. "But thank you. Maybe dinner tomorrow at the new place?" I actually have a dining table now. His response came quickly. I'd like that very much. I set the phone down, surprised by the small flutter of anticipation I felt. Was this a date? At my age? After everything? Perhaps it was. Or perhaps it was simply two friends sharing a meal. Either way, it was one more step into my new life, one more choice made freely, on my own terms. As I prepared for my last night in the house Robert and I had shared for so long, I felt his presence more strongly than I had in months. Not as a ghost haunting the walls, but as a voice in my heart, urging me forward. The future is still yours to create, he'd written. And finally, I was ready to begin. The morning of my departure dawned with unexpected brightness for an early spring day. Sunlight streamed through the small basement window, casting long rectangles of light across the bare floor. I'd slept fitfully, waking several times to the unfamiliar echoes of an almost empty house and the weight of what today would bring. My phone alarm chimed at 6, an old habit from teaching days that I'd never broken. I silenced it and lay still for a moment, listening to the house. No footsteps overhead, no children's voices, no kitchen sounds. Tom and Becky had taken the kids to the apartment yesterday after moving the last of their essential belongings. They'd return later today for final items, but for now, I had the house to myself. I rose and made my way upstairs for the last time as the owner of this home. The kitchen, stripped of family photos and personal touches, felt strangely impersonal, more like a model home than the place where I'd prepared thousands of meals over the decades. Only the old coffee maker remained on the counter, left for this final morning. As the coffee brewed, I walked through each room one last time. The living room where Robert and I had decorated Christmas trees and helped Tom with science projects. The dining room where we'd hosted Thanksgiving dinners and birthday celebrations. The upstairs bedrooms where I'd read bedtime stories and soothed nightmares. Every corner held memories, but I was surprised to find they didn't weigh me down as I'd feared. Instead, they felt like gentle acknowledgments of a life well lived, chapters complete, not abandoned. In what had been our master bedroom, I opened the closet one final time. Tom and Becky had cleared their things, leaving only the few items. Of Robert's I hadn't yet decided what to do with. I touched each suit, each tie, remembering specific moments. His nervousness before job interviews, his pride at Tom's graduation, the way he'd asked my opinion before important presentations. It's time, I said softly, to him and to myself. With careful movements, I selected just one suit jacket, the navy one with elbow patches he'd worn when he taught weekend art classes at the community center. The rest I left for donation, knowing someone else would give them new purpose. Back downstairs, I poured coffee into my travel mug and called Marcus. He'd insisted on helping with the final move, despite my protests that the remaining items would fit in my car. I'm heading out. Now, he answered on the first ring. Need anything else before I come over? Last-minute boxes? Breakfast? Just your company, I replied, surprised by the ease with which the words came. Everything else is ready. While waiting for Marcus, I sat on the bottom porch step, cradling my coffee and watching the neighborhood come alive. Mrs. Peterson, from across the street, collected her newspaper in a floral robe. The Collins boys raced their bikes down the sidewalk, late for something as usual. The Schmidt's golden retriever barked enthusiastically at a passing squirrel. For 40 years, this had been the backdrop of my life. Familiar, comfortable, predictable. Now I was voluntarily stepping into the unknown. A car pulled into the driveway, and Marcus emerged with 2 paper bags from Green Street Cafe and a bouquet of daisies. Moving day breakfast, he announced, climbing the steps to join me. And flowers for your new home. The simple gesture brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thank you, I managed, accepting both offerings. I wasn't expecting a proper send-off? He smiled, settling beside me on the step. This is a big day, Eleanor. A brave one. It deserves recognition. We ate pastries and drank coffee on the porch, watching the neighborhood fully awaken. Marcus didn't rush me, didn't fill the silence with unnecessary chatter. He simply sat companionably as I absorbed these final moments. "Are you having second thoughts?" he asked eventually, noting my contemplative mood. "Not exactly," I replied, considering the question carefully. "More like acknowledging that endings are always a little sad, even when they're the right thing." He nodded, understanding without needing further explanation. "Ready whenever you are." We loaded the last few boxes and bags into our respective cars. My final sweep of the house confirmed what I already knew. There was nothing left that I couldn't bear to leave behind. At the front door, I paused only briefly before locking it and placing the key under the mat where Janet would find it later to give to the Chens at closing. Marcus followed me as I drove across town to Lakeshore Village. The 15-mile journey felt symbolic somehow, not far in distance but immeasurable in significance. With each mile, the tension in my shoulders eased a little more, as if I were physically leaving behind the weight of expectations and obligations that had defined me for so long. The community looked even more welcoming than I remembered. Spring, flowers blooming in carefully tended beds along the entrance drive. Several residents waved as we pulled into the visitor parking area near my new condo. "Mrs. Martinez!" The community manager, Diane, hurried over as I emerged from my car. "Welcome home. We've been looking forward to your arrival." Home. The word resonated differently now, not tied to a specific structure or history, but to something more essential. A place where I belonged, where I was valued, where I could be fully myself. "Thank you," I replied, genuinely touched by her enthusiasm. "I'm looking forward to settling in." With Marcus's help, the last of my belongings were quickly carried inside. The condo, already furnished with the items delivered earlier in the week, looked invitingly arranged. Sunlight poured through the balcony doors, illuminating the open living area. The kitchen, though smaller than what I was accustomed to, gleamed with new appliances and clean countertops. "What do you think?" Marcus asked, setting down the final box. "Does it feel right?" I walked slowly through the space, running my fingers along the back of my reading chair, now positioned perfectly by the window overlooking the lake. Robert's landscape paintings, carefully selected from our collection, adorned walls that had never known us as a couple, but somehow didn't feel alien. "It feels like possibility," I said finally, "like a blank page rather than the end of a book." Marcus smiled. "That's a good way of looking at it." Diane returned with a welcome basket and a folder of information. "We have a community dinner tonight at 6 in the clubhouse," she explained. "It's nothing formal, just a chance for new residents to meet their neighbors. I hope you'll join us." After she left, Marcus helped me unpack the last few boxes while I arranged Robert's suit jacket in the closet beside my clothes. The physical work of settling in, hanging pictures, arranging books, finding homes for cherished objects, anchored me in the present moment, preventing melancholy from taking hold. "Will you come to the dinner with me tonight?" I asked as we broke down the empty boxes. "I'm not sure I'm ready to walk into a room full of strangers alone." "I'd be honored," he replied, his expression warming. "Though I suspect you won't need moral support for long. You have a gift for connecting with people, Eleanor. Always have." The compliment caught me off guard. When was the last time someone had seen me, really seen me, as an individual with qualities and capabilities beyond my role as wife, mother, grandmother? "That's kind of you to say," I murmured, suddenly self-conscious. "It's not kindness, just observation." He checked his watch. "I should head out and let you rest before tonight, unless there's anything else you need help with." "You've done more than enough," I assured him. "I can't thank you properly for all your support these past weeks." "You don't need to thank me," he said simply. "Friends help each other through difficult transitions." That's all this is. But as he left with a promise to return at 5:30, I wondered if that was really all it was. The quiet anticipation I felt at the thought of seeing him again suggested something more. Something I wasn't quite ready to name, but couldn't entirely dismiss either. Alone in my new home, I moved from room to room, making small adjustments, shifting a lamp, rearranging pillows, finding the perfect spot for Robert's reading glasses, which I'd kept as a tangible reminder of our shared love of books. With each adjustment, the space became more mine, reflecting not just who I had been but who I might become. My phone rang just after 3 o'clock. Tom's name appeared on the screen, causing a momentary tightness in my chest. We'd barely spoken since the night of the revelation, our interactions limited to practical matters of moving and property division. I took a deep breath before answering. "Hello, Tom." "Mom." His voice sounded strained, formal. "We've finished at the house. I wanted to let you know that everything's been cleared out except for the items you marked to be donated." "Thank you," I replied, matching his businesslike tone. "The charity will pick those up tomorrow." A pause stretched between us, filled with all the things neither of us seemed ready to say. "So," he finally continued, "you're at the new place now?" "Yes, just finished unpacking the last few things." "And it's nice? Everything you hoped?" The halting question revealed a glimpse of the son I knew, the one who, despite everything, still cared about my well-being. "It's lovely," I said, my voice softening. "The balcony overlooks the lake. I can watch the sunset from my living room." "That's good." Another pause. "Listen, Mom, about everything that happened." "Tom," I interrupted gently, "we don't need to do this now. It's been an emotional time for everyone. Maybe we all need a little space to adjust to the new normal." He sighed, a sound heavy with unresolved feelings. "Maybe you're right. I want you to know that despite how it might seem, we never meant to make you feel unwanted or unappreciated." "I know that," I acknowledged. "Intentions and impact aren't always the same thing." "Yeah." He was quiet for a moment. "The kids are asking when they can see your new place." The mention of Noah and Lily sent a pang through my heart. In the chaos of the move, I'd had little time with them, and I worried about how they were processing all the changes. "Anytime," I said quickly. "They're always welcome. You all are, once you're ready. Maybe next weekend, after everyone's had a chance to settle?" "I'd like that." After we hung up, I sat on the balcony, watching boats skim across the lake's surface. The conversation with Tom hadn't resolved anything, but it felt like the beginning of something. A tentative bridge across the chasm that had opened between us. At precisely 5:30, Marcus arrived for the community dinner, looking more polished than usual in a navy blazer and crisp white shirt. I'd made an effort as well, wearing a floral dress I'd purchased just last week, my first new outfit, in longer than I cared to admit. "You look beautiful," he said simply as I opened the door. "Thank you." I felt a blush rising to my cheeks. "So do you. Handsome, I mean." He offered his arm with an old-fashioned gallantry that made me smile. "Shall we go meet your new neighbors?" The community clubhouse was a short walk from my condo, situated on a rise overlooking the lake. Inside, about 30 residents had gathered for dinner, their conversations creating a pleasant buzz of social energy. Diane spotted us immediately and hurried over to make introductions. "Everyone, this is Eleanor Martinez, our newest resident in Lakeside Building C," she announced. Eleanor was a teacher for 30 years before retiring. "Welcome." Several people approached, offering handshakes and warm greetings. A tall woman with silver hair styled in an elegant bob stepped forward. "I'm Margaret Spencer Building." "B," she said, her handshake firm and confident. "Former high school principal, so we speak the same language. Come sit with Richard and me. We saved the good seats with the lake view. Before I knew it, Marcus and I were seated at a table with Margaret and her husband Richard, along with another couple, David and Susan Chen, no relation to my home's buyers, just a coincidence, who had moved to Lakeshore Village 6 months earlier. Best decision we ever made, Susan confided as we filled our plates from the buffet. Our kids thought we were crazy to leave the family home, but I've never felt more liberated. Our daughter had already mentally redecorated our living room, David added with a wry smile. She was not pleased when we sold to strangers instead. Their experience so mirrored my own that I found myself sharing more than I'd intended about the circumstances of my move. Rather than judgment, I received understanding nods and knowing smiles. Classic basement grandma syndrome, Margaret declared. Richard's mother went through the same thing with his sister, moved her to the guest room, then gradually took over everything else. What did she do? I asked, curious about another woman's solution to a similar situation. Bought an RV and spent 2 years traveling the country, Richard chuckled. Sent postcards from every national park, said it was the best revenge, living well while they figured out their own childcare. The conversation flowed easily throughout dinner, touching on books, local activities, the upcoming community garden lottery, and a dozen other topics. Marcus participated fully, his warmth and wit earning approving glances from my new acquaintances. As coffee and dessert were served, Margaret leaned closer. "Your friend here is quite charming," she murmured. "How long have you been seeing each other?" "Oh, we're not," I began automatically, then paused, unsure how to characterize our relationship. "Marcus has been a wonderful support through my move. We're friends." Margaret's knowing smile suggested she wasn't entirely convinced by my explanation, but she didn't press the issue. "Well, he seems lovely, and it's never too late for new beginnings, you know." Her words stayed with me as the evening progressed. New beginnings. Wasn't that exactly what I'd been seeking? Not just a new home, but a new way of living, new connections, new possibilities for what my remaining years might hold. As the gathering wound down, several residents invited me to upcoming activities, a book club meeting, a walking group that circled the lake each morning, a watercolor class held in the clubhouse studio. Each invitation represented a thread in what could become a new social fabric, one I would weave myself rather than having it imposed upon me. Walking back to my condo with Marcus under a sky turning indigo with approaching night, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. "You were right," I told him, our arms brushing occasionally as we strolled along the lakeshore path. "I didn't need moral support after all. They're a welcoming group." "I told you," he replied, sounding pleased. "Though I'm glad I came anyway. I enjoyed meeting them all. Especially Margaret. She reminds me of you." "Of me? How so?" "Direct, observant, not afraid to speak her mind." He glanced at me with a small smile. Qualities I admire greatly. We reached my door, and the familiar end-of-evening awkwardness descended, that moment of uncertainty about how to conclude our time together. "Thank you for coming with me tonight," I said, keys in hand but making no move to use them. It made everything easier. "It was my pleasure." He hesitated, then added, "I was thinking of trying that new breakfast place on Willow Street tomorrow. Would you like to join me? Around 9? Another invitation, another choice that was entirely mine to make. "I'd love to," I replied, surprising myself with how much I meant it. His smile widened. "Good night then, Eleanor. Sleep well in your new home." After he left, I moved through the darkened condo, turning on lamps and adjusting thermostats, small rituals of claiming space. Through the balcony doors, the lake gleamed silver in the moonlight, a view I now owned as surely as the walls around me. I readied myself for bed in the unfamiliar bathroom, the new routines feeling strange but not unwelcome. In the bedroom, I'd placed a photograph of Robert on the nightstand. One from our 30th anniversary trip to Yellowstone, his face tanned and laughing as he pointed out a distant moose. "Well," I said to his image as I slipped beneath covers that still smelled of the store, "I did it. New place, new start. You'd laugh at how nervous I was about that dinner tonight. But you'd be proud too, I think." Sleep came more easily than I'd expected, deep and dreamless in my new sanctuary. The next week unfolded in a pleasant rhythm of small discoveries and establishing routines. I learned which cabinet drawer stuck, slightly, which neighbor walked their dog at precisely 7 each morning, which chair on the balcony caught the morning sun just right for reading. Marcus and I fell into an easy pattern of shared meals and activities. Breakfast at the new place on Willow Street, excellent scones, mediocre coffee, an art exhibition at the local gallery, interesting but overpriced, a community concert, in the Lakeside Pavilion, enthusiastic if not entirely polished. We didn't label what was developing between us, but I found myself looking forward to his calls, arranging my schedule around our plans, wondering what he might think of a book I was reading or a view I'd discovered on my morning walks. Meanwhile, my social circle at Lakeshore Village expanded rapidly. Margaret introduced me to the garden club, where I secured a small plot for summer planting. David and Susan invited me to join their weekly bridge game, patiently refreshing my rusty skills. The morning walking group welcomed me as if I'd always been a member. Each interaction reinforced what I was gradually accepting: that identity could be fluid, that I could be more than the roles that had defined me for decades, that Eleanor existed separately from Mom and Grandma and Robert's widow. The Friday before Tom's planned visit with the children, I received a call from Janet, the real estate agent. "Just wanted to let you know everything went perfectly at closing," she reported cheerfully. "The Chens are delighted with the house, and the full amount has been transferred to your account as instructed." "Thank you for everything," I replied. A weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying suddenly lifted. It was done. The house was truly no longer mine. "How are you settling into Lakeshore Village?" she asked. "I've had several clients very happy there." "It feels right," I told her, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. More right than I expected, actually. After we hung up, I walked through my condo, my home, with fresh eyes. In just a week, I'd already made it mine in ways large and small. Robert's landscape paintings harmonized with new watercolors I'd purchased at the gallery. My grandmother's quilt draped across the modern sofa. Books filled shelves in an order that made sense only to me. It wasn't the house on Maple Street, with its 4 decades of memories. It was something else entirely. A space that reflected not who I had been, but who I was becoming. The thought was still with me the next morning as I prepared for Tom's visit. I'd baked oatmeal cookies, remembering that Noah and Lily preferred them to chocolate chip, and arranged a vase of fresh flowers on the dining table, small gestures of welcome, of continuity amid change. At precisely 11, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath before answering, uncertain what to expect. The children rushed in first, exclaiming over the view and the fancy elevator and the huge swimming pool they'd spotted on the way in. Tom and Becky followed more hesitantly, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and lingering discomfort. The awkwardness was palpable as I invited them in, offering cookies and showing the children around the small space. "It's really nice, Mom," Tom said finally, standing by the balcony doors. "Much nicer than I pictured." "What did you picture?" I couldn't help asking. He had the grace to look embarrassed. "I don't know. Something institutional, I guess. This it suits you." "Thank you," I replied, accepting the olive branch for what it was. "I'm happy here." Becky hovered near the kitchen, examining photographs I'd arranged on a side table. "You have new pictures," she observed. "I don't recognize these frames." "I bought them last week," I explained. A fresh start seemed to call for new frames, too. She nodded, not meeting my eyes. Makes sense. The visit proceeded with stilted conversation and careful politeness, but beneath the surface tension, I sensed a gradual thawing. Tom asked about the community garden. Becky complimented the view. The children, oblivious to adult undercurrents, begged to explore the grounds. "Can we go see the pool, Grandma? Please?" Lily tugged at my hand, her enthusiasm impossible to resist. "Of course," I agreed. "We can all go." As we walked the paths of Lakeshore Village, I found myself pointing out features with unexpected pride. The gazebo where morning yoga classes were held, the clubhouse where I'd joined the book club, the small dock where residents could launch. Kayaks. "You've learned a lot about this place in just a week," Tom observed as the children ran ahead to examine a fountain. "I've been exploring," I replied. "It's a friendly community, easy to feel at home." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm still angry, about how everything happened with the house." "I know. But I'm trying to understand." He kicked at a pebble on the path. "Becky and I have been talking a lot about what you said that night, about how we made you feel." I waited, giving him space to continue. "We didn't see it," he admitted finally. "How much we were taking for granted, how much we were expecting from you without asking. I'm not saying we would have done anything differently with the house. We still needed a bigger place, and it made financial sense. But we could have approached it differently, respected your position more." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was an acknowledgement, which from my proud son was significant progress. "I appreciate you saying that," I told him. "And for what it's worth, I could have communicated better too, instead of going along with everything until I exploded." He almost smiled. "You did explode pretty spectacularly. I learned from the best. You had some legendary tantrums as a toddler." This time he did smile, a genuine one that reached his eyes. "So, I've been told." We walked in more comfortable silence for a while, watching the children explore their new surroundings with uninhibited curiosity. "By the way," Tom said eventually, "we found a house. Not as nice as yours, the old one I mean, but in the same school district. We close next month." "That's wonderful news," I said sincerely. "I'm glad it worked out so quickly." "Yeah. Well, real estate moves fast these days." He cleared his throat. "Anyway, once we're settled, maybe you could come for dinner sometimes, if you want to." The invitation, hesitant as it was, represented the first real step toward rebuilding our relationship. "I'd like that very much," I replied. When they left a few hours later, the children extracted promises that I would attend Lily's dance, recital, and Noah's soccer game the following weekend. Becky hugged me briefly, still awkward but making an effort. Tom lingered after they started toward the car. "Mom," he said quietly, "are you really okay here? Honestly?" The question seemed to come from the little boy who'd always worried about me when Robert traveled for work, who'd bring me dandelions and ask if I was lonely. Despite everything, that caring child still existed within the man before me. "I'm more than okay," I assured him. "I'm beginning to thrive." He nodded, accepting my answer even if he didn't fully understand it yet. "Good. That's good." As I watched them drive away, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that the visit had gone better than feared, sadness for the closeness we'd lost, hope that we might build something new from the ashes of resentment and misunderstanding. I was still standing on the walkway, lost in thought, when Marcus approached from the direction of the main entrance. "I saw a family leaving," he said, joining me. "Was that Tom and the children?" "Yes," I confirmed. "Their first visit. It went better than expected." "I'm glad to hear it." He studied my expression. "Are you all right?" "I am," I realized. the words feeling true and solid. Actually, I'm just thinking about how much has changed in such a short time. A month ago, I was living in a basement, feeling invisible and taken for granted. And now? And now? He prompted gently. I gestured around us, at the community I was quickly coming to love, at the future spreading before me like an open road. Now I'm here, starting over at 68. Who would have thought it possible? I would have, Marcus said simply. You've always had more strength than you realized, Eleanor. All you needed was the chance to use it. As we walked back toward my condo, discussing plans for the afternoon, I reflected on his words. Strength. Yes, that's what I'd found in the midst of loss and change and difficult choices. Not the strength to endure silently, which I'd always had in abundance, but something different. The strength to assert my own worth, to claim my own space, to write my own story. The chapter of my life spent in the house on Maple Street had ended. The basement grandmother was gone. In her place stood a woman who was only beginning to discover who she might become. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I was genuinely excited to find out. Spring melted into summer with a gentleness that matched my evolving life at Lakeshore Village. By late June, my small garden plot had begun to flourish, tomato plants stretching skyward, herbs releasing their fragrance in the morning sun, marigolds adding splashes of orange and gold along the borders. Each morning, I'd wake early to tend my growing things before the heat of the day set in. You've got quite the green thumb, Margaret observed one morning as she stopped by my plot. Those tomatoes look like they'll be ready soon. Another week, I think, I replied, brushing soil from my hands. I'm growing the same variety Robert and I always planted. Sweet millions. They produce all summer long. Sharing wisdom from the past while creating something new? Margaret nodded approvingly. That's the secret to a good third act, isn't it? A good third act. The theatrical metaphor appealed to me. My first act had been childhood through early adulthood, education, career beginnings, falling in love with Robert. The second act encompassed marriage, motherhood, creating a home, teaching generations of children. Now I was firmly in my third act, not an ending, but a different kind of beginning. My days developed a rhythm entirely of my own choosing. Mornings in the garden or walking with the lake group, afternoons reading or exploring the community's art studio where I'd begun experimenting with watercolors again. Evenings often spent with Marcus or new friends, dinner at the clubhouse, concerts in the pavilion, bridge games that grew increasingly competitive as my skills returned. The first harvested tomatoes from my garden became pasta sauce shared with Marcus on my balcony. The initial watercolor attempts became cards sent to Noah and Lily. The morning walks led to discoveries of hidden pathways and secluded benches, perfect for quiet reflection. Small pleasures, perhaps, but they were mine. Chosen freely, enjoyed fully, untainted by obligation or resentment. My relationship with Tom and his family was evolving too, albeit more slowly. True to my promise, I attended Lily's dance recital and Noah's soccer match, sitting somewhat awkwardly with Tom and Becky among the other parents and grandparents. The children's delight at seeing me soothed much of the lingering tension. "Grandma, did you see my pirouette?" Lily had asked breathlessly after her performance, tutu slightly askew and glitter eyeshadow smudged. It was beautiful, I assured her, accepting her enthusiastic hug. You were the most graceful flower on stage. Noah, less effusive but equally pleased by my presence, had simply nudged my shoulder with his after his soccer game. Thanks for coming, he mumbled, the preteen. Coolness not quite hiding his smile. These moments, unforced, genuine connections with my grandchildren, reinforced that family bonds could survive even significant ruptures if given space to heal on their own terms. In late July, after much negotiation about timing and comfort levels, I accepted an invitation to dinner at Tom and Becky's new house. It was smaller than mine had been, with a layout that needed work, but they'd already begun making it their own. "We're thinking of knocking out this wall," Tom explained, as he showed me around, to open up the kitchen to the dining area. "That would bring in more natural light," I agreed, noting how the afternoon sun hit the western windows. "It would make the space feel larger, too." "That's what I keep telling Becky," he said, sounding pleased that I shared his vision. "It's worth the investment." As we toured the house, I was struck by how carefully Tom pointed out features they planned to preserve. Original hardwood under the carpet, built-in bookshelves in the study, leaded glass in the front door. Was he making a point about respecting the home's character? A subtle acknowledgement of my feelings about the changes they'd made to my house? Perhaps. Or perhaps he was simply proud of their find and wanted my approval. Either way, I gave it, freely. "It's a lovely home, Tom. I can see why you were drawn to it." Dinner was served on the patio, the children chattering about summer activities and the upcoming school year. Becky, who'd been quieter than usual during my visit, finally spoke up as she served dessert. "I've been meaning to ask," she began, not quite meeting my eyes, "if you'd be willing to watch the kids after school 2 days a week once the fall semester starts. I know it's a lot to ask, but my schedule at work has changed, and we're struggling to find consistent care." I noticed she phrased it as a request, not an assumption, a significant shift from before. Still, I felt a momentary trepidation. Was this the beginning of slipping back into old patterns, of being the ever-available grandmother whose time belonged to everyone but herself? Tom must have seen my hesitation. "It's completely fine if you can't," he added quickly. "We understand. You have your own life now. We've looked into after-school programs as a backup." "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "Let me think about which days might work with my schedule. I have watercolor classes on Wednesdays, and the garden club meets on Mondays." "You take watercolor classes?" Lily perked up immediately. "Can I come sometime?" "And garden club sounds boring," Noah chimed in. "But can I see your garden? Mom says you grow the best tomatoes." Their interest, genuine, enthusiastic, touched something deep within me. Here was a chance to share parts of my new life with them, to be a different kind of grandmother than I'd been before. "I think that could be arranged," I smiled. "Perhaps you could both visit my place one afternoon, and I could show you the garden and the art studio. Maybe you'd even like to try painting with me, Lily." "Yes, please," she exclaimed, bouncing in her seat. By the time I left that evening, we'd agreed I would pick up the children on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons and bring them to my condo until Tom or Becky could collect them after work. Not out of obligation or assumption, but as a conscious choice. A gift freely given with clear boundaries that everyone understood. As Tom walked me to my car, he paused, hands in his pockets. "Thanks, Mom, for considering it. I know things are different now." "They are," I agreed. "But different doesn't have to mean worse. Sometimes it can be better, healthier, for everyone." He nodded slowly. "I'm starting to see that." On the drive back to Lakeshore Village, I reflected on how much had changed in the few months since I'd made my stand. Not just external circumstances, where we lived, what we owned, but the fundamental dynamics of our relationships. The broken patterns were being rebuilt in new configurations, with more respect and more honesty on all sides. The next morning, I met Marcus for our now regular coffee at the Clubhouse Cafe. As I recounted the dinner and the childcare arrangement, he listened thoughtfully. "Are you sure about this?" he asked when I'd finished. "You fought so hard for your independence. I'd hate to see you slide back into being taken for granted." His concern warmed me, even as I shook my head. "It's different this time. I'm choosing to spend time with my grandchildren on my terms. 2 specific afternoons, not whenever needed. And they're coming to my space, not me going to theirs." "Fair enough," he conceded. "I just worry about you." I know. I reached across the table to squeeze his hand. And I value that more than I can say. But I think I can be both independent Eleanor and involved grandma. The key is choice and respect. He turned his hand to hold mine. You've changed so much since I first met you at the library. Do you realize that? You speak with such confidence now. Had I changed, or simply returned to who I'd been before life and circumstances had gradually diminished me? Perhaps both. The woman I was becoming incorporated elements of who I'd always been with newfound clarity about what I wanted and needed. Speaking of changes, Marcus said, a hint of nervousness entering his voice, I've been thinking about something I'd like to discuss with you. That sounds serious, I observed, noting how he straightened in his chair. Not serious exactly, but important. He took a deep breath. The lease on my apartment is ending next month, and I've been considering my options. One possibility, if you're open to it, would be for me to look at units here at Lakeshore Village. My heart gave a little jump. Here? You'd want to move? Here? The community suits me, he explained quickly. The book clubs, the walking paths, the cultural activities, and he hesitated, then continued more softly. If I'm honest, the main attraction is being closer to you, Eleanor. We hadn't put labels on our relationship, hadn't discussed the future in any concrete terms. At our age, with pasts that stretched, decades behind us, romance developed differently, more carefully perhaps, but also with less pretense and greater clarity about what mattered. I think that would be lovely, I said finally, surprising myself with how much I meant it. There's a unit available in Building D, just across the courtyard from mine. 1 bedroom, north-facing balcony. It might suit you. His face brightened. You've noticed available units? I might have made some inquiries, I admitted, feeling a blush rise to my cheeks. Just out of curiosity, of course. Of course, he agreed, his eyes crinkling with amusement. Should we speak with Diane about viewing it this afternoon? The ease with which we made this tentative plan to merge our futures, not completely, not recklessly, but meaningfully nonetheless, felt both terrifying and right. At 68, I wasn't naive about romance or blind to the complications that could arise, but I also wasn't willing to deny myself the joy of connection out of fear or outdated conventions about what was proper for a woman my age. August. Brought the full bounty of my garden, tomatoes, peppers, basil, and zinnias that attracted butterflies by the dozen. I made fresh salsa to share at community events, pressed flowers between book pages to make bookmarks for the children, experimented with botanical prints in my watercolor class. It also brought Marcus's move to Lakeshore Village, a process I observed with growing delight as he settled into the unit across the courtyard. We maintained our separate spaces, neither of us ready to completely entangle our lives, but proximity added a new dimension to our relationship. Morning coffee on his balcony, evening walks without needing to drive to meet each other, the casual intimacy of dropping by with extra tomatoes or a book to share. When the children began visiting on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, they quickly incorporated Marcus into their routine. Noah discovered Marcus's collection of nature photography books and spent hours poring over images of national parks. Lily was fascinated by his knowledge of birds, demanding identification of every feathered visitor to the balcony feeders. "Is Mr. Marcus your boyfriend?" Lily asked one afternoon as we worked on watercolor techniques in the community art studio. The question, delivered with a child's directness, caught me off guard. "He's a very special friend," I replied carefully. She considered this, brush poised over her paper. "Like how Jake is Noah's special friend who comes over for sleepovers." Something like that, I agreed, wondering what Tom and Becky would make of the comparison. When you get older, friendship can be complicated in wonderful ways. "I think it's nice," she declared, returning to her painting. "You smile more, when he's around. Out of the mouths of babes, as the saying goes. She was right, of course. Marcus brought joy to my days, a shared understanding that required no explanation, a companionship that supported rather than diminished my sense of self. In late August, Helen invited me to join her and several other retired teachers for lunch. It had been months since I'd seen most of them, our connections having gradually faded after I'd left teaching and then diminished further during my months in the basement. "Eleanor," Grace Peterson exclaimed when I entered the restaurant, "you look marvelous. Retirement clearly agrees with you." If only she knew the full story, I thought as I greeted each woman with hugs and exclamations of how long it had been. I'd chosen not to share the details of my situation with anyone outside my immediate circle, preferring to focus on the present rather than dwelling on past difficulties. "So, tell us everything," Gene Simmons insisted once we'd ordered. "We hear, you've moved to Lakeshore Village. How are you liking it?" As I described my new home and activities, I was struck by how animated I felt, how easily the words flowed. These women had known me at the height of my teaching career, when I'd been confident and purposeful in the classroom. Their presence seemed to reconnect me to that version of myself, reminding me of capabilities I'd temporarily forgotten. "And is there a special someone in the picture?" Grace asked with the sly directness that had made her such an effective kindergarten teacher. Helen mentioned a gentleman friend. I shot Helen a mock accusatory glance. "His name is Marcus," I admitted. "He owns the bookstore near the library where I used to buy supplies. We reconnected a few months ago, and he's recently moved to Lakeshore Village as well." The table erupted in delighted exclamations and demands for more details. Their genuine pleasure in my happiness, free from judgment about the propriety of romance at our age, touched me deeply. "Good for you," Jean said, raising her glass in a small toast. "Life's too short to worry about what others think." "Speaking of what others think," Helen interjected, "how are things with Tom and Becky? Last I heard, they weren't thrilled about your move." I sighed, considering how to answer. "We're working on it," I said finally. "It's been challenging, but we're finding new ways to be family. The grandchildren visit me regularly now, and we're gradually rebuilding trust." "Family dynamics are always complicated," Grace noted wisely, "especially when roles shift unexpectedly. But children, even adult children, are remarkably adaptable when given the chance." Her words stayed with me long after lunch ended. Adaptability. Wasn't that what I'd been discovering in myself these past months? The capacity to change, to grow, to become something different than what circumstances and expectations had shaped me to be. That capacity was tested the following week when Tom called with an unexpected request. "Mom, I hate to ask this," he began, his voice strained, "but Becky's mother fell and broke her hip yesterday. Becky's flying out to Arizona tomorrow to help her father manage things for a week or two." "I'm so sorry to hear that," I said, genuinely concerned. "Is Patricia going to be all right?" "The doctors say the prognosis is good, but she'll need extensive rehab. The thing is, with Becky gone, I'm struggling to figure out how to handle the kids' schedules. I have that big client presentation next week that I can't reschedule, and there's no after-school program on Wednesday because of Teacher in Service Day, and you need more help with Noah and Lily," I finished for him. "Yes," he admitted. "I know it's a lot to ask, especially given everything that's happened. But is there any way you could take them for a few extra days? Maybe even have them stay overnight once or twice?" 6 months ago, such a request would have been delivered. As an expectation, not a question. 6 months ago, I would have agreed without hesitation, rearranging my life to accommodate everyone else's needs. 6 months ago, I'd been living in their basement. Now, I took a moment to consider what I was willing and able to do. What boundaries needed to be maintained, what compromises I could make without losing myself in the process. "I can help," I said finally. "But let's be specific about the schedule. I have commitments I need to keep as well." The relief in Tom's voice was palpable. Thank you, Mom. Anything you can do would be a huge help. We worked out an arrangement. The children would stay with me for 3 nights the following week, and I would handle their after-school activities on the days when Tom had critical work commitments. In return, he promised to have detailed schedules, necessary supplies, and completed homework ready when I picked them up. When I shared the plan with Marcus over dinner that evening, he studied me thoughtfully. "You're sure about this? 3 overnight stays is quite different from afternoon visits." "I am," I assured him. "This is a genuine family emergency, not a return to taking me for granted." Tom was clear about what he needed and respectful of my time. That's progress worth acknowledging. "And the children will be in your space. On your terms," he observed. "Not you going back to that house." "Exactly." I smiled at his understanding. "Besides, I think it might be good for all of us. A chance to create new patterns, new memories." The week of the children's extended stay turned out to be both more challenging and more rewarding than I'd anticipated. Noah and Lily arrived at my condo with backpacks, duffel bags, and the wide-eyed excitement of children embarking on an adventure. "Grandma, where do we sleep?" Lily asked immediately, bouncing on her toes as she surveyed my compact living space. "I've set up the guest room for both of you," I explained, leading them down the short hallway. "Noah, there's an air mattress for you, and Lily, you'll take the daybed." The room, which normally served as my reading nook and occasional guest space, had been transformed with fresh linens, nightlights, and small touches to make them feel welcome. Noah's favorite soccer team pennant pinned to the wall, a stuffed unicorn placed on Lily's pillow. "You remembered Mr. Sparkles?" Lily gasped, grabbing the unicorn that had traveled between households during previous overnight stays at the old house. "Of course," I smiled. "He's been waiting for you." The first evening established our routine for the week. Homework at the dining table with my assistance when needed. Dinner prepared together with age-appropriate tasks assigned to each child, board games or reading before bedtime. Not so different from how I'd managed when they visited the old house, but somehow the context changed everything. Here, in my chosen space, surrounded by evidence of my independent life, watercolor supplies stacked neatly on the sideboard, garden plans spread across my desk, books selected for my interests rather than others' expectations, I found a new kind of joy in grandmothering. Not the self-effacing service I'd fallen into before, but a genuine sharing of who I was with these young people I loved. "Can we help in your garden tomorrow?" Noah asked on the second evening as we prepared dinner. "Dad says you grow the best. Tomatoes ever." "I'd like that," I replied, touched that Tom had spoken positively about my garden. "Maybe we could make fresh salsa with what we harvest." "Yes." Lily clapped her hands. "And can Mr. Marcus come over? He told me he's never tried real salsa before." The children's easy acceptance of Marcus in my life had been one of the unexpected blessings of our new arrangement. They treated him as a natural extension of their visits, including him in games and conversations without the awkwardness that sometimes characterized adult reactions to late-life relationships. "I'm sure he'd love to join us," I assured her. "We'll invite him for dinner tomorrow." That night, after tucking the children into bed and answering Lily's inevitable one more story request, I sat on my balcony in the soft evening air. The lights of Lakeshore Village twinkled around the lake, and from across the courtyard, I could see Marcus's reading lamp glowing warmly in his living room. A text message lit up my phone. "How's it going with the grandkids? Need reinforcements?" I smiled at his consideration. "All quiet on the Western Front," I typed back. "They've requested your presence for salsa making tomorrow evening if you're free." "Wouldn't miss it," came his immediate reply. "Sweet dreams, Eleanor." Sweet dreams indeed, sitting there in the gentle darkness, listening to the muted sounds of my grandchildren settling into sleep in the next room, feeling the quiet presence of Marcus nearby. I was struck by an unexpected realization. I was happy. Not the muted contentment I'd settled for in my later years with Robert. Not the forced cheerfulness I'd maintained for everyone else's benefit during my basement days, but genuinely, deeply happy. It wasn't that life was perfect. The wound between Tom and me was still healing, still tender in places. The future held uncertainties, as all futures do. My knees still ached when rain threatened, and sometimes I worried about what aging might bring. But I had created this life, this specific configuration of home and relationships and activities, through my own choices. I had reclaimed agency over my time, my space, my identity. I had transformed from the invisible basement grandmother into Eleanor Martinez, a woman with preferences and boundaries and joy of her own making. The third day of the children's stay coincided with the community's end-of-summer festival. Fairy lights were strung around the gazebo, tables laden with potluck contributions lined the clubhouse patio, and a small band of residents set up instruments for dancing under the stars. "Can we go? Please?" Lily begged when she saw the preparations from my balcony. "I brought my twirly dress." "We'd planned to," I assured her. "I signed up to bring my garden salsa, remember? And Marcus is meeting us there." The evening unfolded like a scene from a life I'd never imagined for myself. Introducing my grandchildren to my new friends, watching Lily dance with David Chen, while Noah discussed soccer strategies with Richard, sharing the salsa we'd made together to appreciative compliments from neighbors who now knew me by name. "Your grandchildren are delightful," Margaret commented as we watched Lily attempt to teach Marcus a complicated twirling maneuver. "They have your spirit." "My spirit?" I echoed, surprised by the observation. "That spark," she clarified. "The curiosity, the enthusiasm. I see it in you when you're working in the garden or showing your latest watercolor. They have that same quality." I'd never considered that I might have passed along aspects of myself to the children beyond superficial resemblances. The idea that something essential, something Margaret recognized as my spirit, lived on in Noah and Lily touched me profoundly. As the evening wound down, the children growing sleepy despite their protests, Marcus helped me gather our belongings for the short walk back to my condo. "This was perfect," he said quietly, gesturing to include the whole scene, the community winding down its celebration, the children leaning against me tiredly, the warm summer night. "Seeing you like this, Eleanor. It's like watching someone who's finally found her rightful place." His words resonated with what I'd been feeling. A rightful place, not defined by others' needs or expectations, but discovered through my own journey of loss and restoration. "I think you might be right," I agreed, linking my arm through his as we walked home. That night, after the children were asleep and Marcus had returned to his own condo with a gentle goodnight kiss at my door, I found myself drawn to the small desk where I kept personal correspondence. Opening the drawer, I removed a journal. I'd started shortly after moving to Lakeshore Village, a simple leather-bound book where I'd begun recording thoughts and observations about my new life. I turned to a fresh page and wrote, "Today I realized something important. The basement was never the problem. It was a symbol, yes, but the real issue was that I'd allowed myself to become invisible long before I was physically relegated to a lower level. I'd accepted the gradual erosion of my personhood, one small concession at a time, until there was almost nothing left that was truly mine. The miracle isn't that I found the courage to leave, though that took strength I didn't know I possessed. The real miracle is what's happened since. This transformation from a woman defined by her roles to a woman defined by her choices. I am Eleanor first. Grandmother, mother, friend, companion. These are cherished aspects of my identity, but they no longer consume it entirely. I have reclaimed the center of my own life. What would I tell that woman in the basement if I could? Reach back through time? I would say, it's not too late. It's never too late to remember who you are, to rediscover what brings you joy, to insist on being seen. The journey doesn't end with walking away. It begins there, I closed the journal, sensing that I'd captured something essential about these months of change. Not just a story about a house sale or a family conflict, but a deeper narrative about reclamation and rebirth. When Tom arrived to collect the children the following afternoon, I noticed he seemed more relaxed than he had been in weeks, despite the stress of managing work and family alone. "How's Becky's mother doing?" I asked as the children gathered. "Their belongings." "Stable," he replied. "The surgery went well, but recovery will be slow. Becky may need to stay another week." "If you need help with the children, just let me know," I offered. "We've had a wonderful time together." He studied me for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "You seem different, Mom. Happy. It suits you." "I am happy," I confirmed simply. "This life suits me." He nodded slowly. "I'm starting to see that. And I'm glad for you, even if I didn't handle the transition very well." It was the closest he'd come to a direct acknowledgement of how poorly he'd reacted to my decision. Not quite an apology, but another step toward healing. "We're all learning," I told him, me included. As they prepared to leave, Lily threw her arms around my waist. "Can we come back next week, Grandma? Even if Mom is home? I want to show her my watercolor painting when it's finished drying." "That depends on your parents," I said, looking to Tom for his response. "I think we can arrange it," he agreed readily. "Maybe Saturday afternoon. Becky could join us by video call to see the painting if she's still in Arizona." The casual ease with which he suggested this, a normal family visit, not an emergency, arrangement or obligation, felt like a significant shift in our relationship. We were finding our way to a new normal, one where connections remained, but boundaries were respected. After they left, the condo felt temporarily empty, as spaces do when vibrant presences depart. But unlike the hollow feeling I'd experienced in the big house after Robert died, this emptiness held promise rather than desolation. It was the quiet of returned solitude, not abandonment, a space that would fill again with my own activities and choices. Marcus called that evening to check how the handoff had gone. "Any drama or just the usual kid chaos?" he asked. "No drama," I assured him. Actually, Tom seemed almost accepting, maybe even supportive of my new life here. He even noticed I seem happy. "That's because you radiate it," Marcus replied warmly. "Anyone paying attention would notice." "Do I?" The idea that my inner state might be so visible both pleased and surprised me. "Absolutely. You're a different woman than the one I met at the library that day. Or rather, you're more fully yourself, the self that was always there but had been muted somehow." His perception matched my own feelings so closely that it took my breath away. "That's exactly it," I said softly. "I feel more like myself than I have in years." "That," he declared, "is the definition of a successful transformation." Transformation. The word echoed in my mind long after we ended the call. Not just a change of address or circumstances, but a fundamental shift in how I experienced myself and my place in the world. The basement grandmother was gone. In her place stood Eleanor Martinez, artist, gardener, friend, lover, grandmother on her own terms, a woman who had found the courage to reclaim her life when most people thought she should be quietly fading into the background. And the most remarkable part? This transformation wasn't ending. It was only just beginning. The autumn leaves had begun their transformation when the most unexpected invitation arrived. Tom and Becky were hosting Thanksgiving at their new home, and they wanted me to come, not to cook or serve or handle the grandchildren, but simply to be a guest at the table. "Are you sure about this?" I asked Tom over the phone, curiosity and caution mingling in my voice. I know how stressful hosting can be, especially for the first time. "We're sure," he replied, and I could hear the determination beneath his casual tone. "Becky's been practicing the turkey for weeks. We want to start some new traditions and, Well, we want you to be part of them. I thought of all the Thanksgivings past, decades of rising before dawn to prepare stuffing and peel potatoes, of orchestrating the precise timing of side dishes and desserts, of cleaning up while others dozed in front of football games. The prospect of simply arriving as a guest felt almost decadent. "That sounds lovely," I said. "Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself," he assured me, then hesitated before adding, "And Marcus too, if you'd like. The kids keep asking when Mr. Birdbook is coming back." The invitation to include Marcus, offered without prompting, felt like a significant gesture. Tom was not merely tolerating my new life but acknowledging it, making space for it within the reconfigured map of our family relationships. "We'd be delighted," I told him, warmth spreading through me despite the autumn chill outside my window. When I shared the news with Marcus that evening during our walking group's afternoon circuit of the lake, his eyebrows rose in surprise. "Thanksgiving with your family? Are you sure they're ready for that? Are we ready for that?" I laughed at his consternation. "It's just a meal, Marcus. Besides, according to Tom, you've been specifically requested by the junior members of the household." His expression softened. "Those kids are something special. Noah showed me his science project sketches last time we saw them. That boy has a real eye for detail." "He gets that from his grandfather," I said, the mention of Robert no longer bringing the sharp pang it once had. Robert could spend hours documenting the growth patterns in our garden, measuring, sketching, recording every detail. "I wish I could have known him," Marcus said quietly. "He sounds like a remarkable man." He was, I agreed, feeling the gentle truth of it. "And he would have liked you, I think. You both share that same curiosity about the world, that appreciation for small wonders." We walked in comfortable silence for a while, our breath visible in the cooling air. Around us, Lakeshore Village. Prepared for the seasonal shift. Gardeners clearing summer plots, maintenance workers checking heating systems, residents swapping lightweight jackets for heavier coats. "I never expected this," I admitted as we completed our circuit. "Any of it, really. Moving here, meeting you, finding a new relationship with my family that actually feels healthier." "Life seldom follows the expected path," Marcus observed, taking my hand as we headed toward the clubhouse for the evening's book discussion. "That's what makes it interesting." The weeks leading up to Thanksgiving brought a flurry of activity at Lakeshore Village. The community garden was put to bed for winter, with a final harvest celebration where residents shared the last of their produce. My tomato plants, which had been extraordinarily productive, yielded enough for one final batch of sauce that I froze in small containers. Winter sunshine, as Marcus called it. The watercolor class mounted a modest exhibition in the clubhouse gallery, and to my astonishment, 3 of my pieces were selected for display. Nothing fancy, studies of lake reflections, garden flowers, the changing trees, but seeing them, framed and hung in public view, stirred something profound in me. "You're good, Eleanor," my instructor commented during the opening reception. "You have a natural eye for composition and color. Have you considered entering the regional senior arts showcase in the spring?" The suggestion that my work might have value beyond personal enjoyment was startling. All those years ago, in college, professors had noted my artistic promise before marriage, and motherhood had redirected my path. Now, in my 7th decade, could that dormant talent truly be nurtured again? "I'll think about it," I promised, the possibility unfurling like a new leaf in my mind. Margaret, who had become a close friend over the months, nudged my arm as the instructor moved on to the next artist. "You absolutely should enter," she insisted. "Your work has that quality people respond to. Emotional honesty, I think. You don't try to make things prettier than they are, but you find the beauty in their truth." Her words stayed with me, resonating with what I'd been learning about life in general. There was beauty in truth, in seeing things as they actually were, rather than as we wished them to be or thought they should be. My family wasn't perfect. My new relationship had complications. My advancing age brought limitations. But within these truths lay genuine joy, connection, and possibility. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke early out of habit, momentarily disoriented by the absence of kitchen duties awaiting me. The day stretched ahead, open and unstructured until our late afternoon gathering at Tom and Becky's. "What does one do on Thanksgiving when one isn't cooking?" I asked Marcus during our morning phone call. "Whatever one pleases," he replied, the smile evident in his voice. "Read a book, take a walk, paint, nap. The possibilities are endless when you're not elbow deep in stuffing." I chose all of those options, savoring the luxury of unobligated time. A long walk by the lake in the crisp morning air. An hour with the novel my book club was discussing next week. A small watercolor sketch of the view from my balcony, capturing the particular quality of November light on the water. And yes, even a short nap in my reading chair, something I'd rarely indulged in before. When Marcus arrived to drive us to Tom's house, he carried a bouquet of autumnal flowers and a bottle of wine. "For our hosts," he explained. I wasn't sure what was appropriate, so I hedged my bets. "They're perfect," I assured him, noting how handsome he looked in his russet sweater and tweed jacket. At 65, he carried himself with the comfortable dignity of a man at ease in his own skin, his silver hair and laugh lines speaking of a life fully experienced. The drive to Tom and Becky's new home took us past my old neighborhood. As we approached the familiar streets, I felt a momentary tightness in my chest. Not regret, precisely, but acknowledgement of all that had changed in the space of a year. "Would you like to drive past the old house?" Marcus asked, ever perceptive to my moods. I considered it briefly, then shook my head. "No need. That chapter's closed now." Tom and Becky's home glowed with welcome as we pulled into the driveway, windows bright against the early twilight, the garage door open to accommodate the multiple vehicles already arrived. Before we could even retrieve our contributions from the back seat, the front door flew open and Lily raced out, her holiday dress fluttering beneath an unbuttoned coat. "Grandma! Mr. Marcus! You're here!" she called, launching herself at me with unrestrained enthusiasm. "Mom let me help make the pies, and I only dropped one piece of crust on the floor, and Bruno ate it, but don't tell anyone. Your secret is safe with us," Marcus assured her gravely while I hugged her close, breathing in the scent of cinnamon and cranberry that clung to her hair. Noah appeared more sedately in the doorway, trying to maintain his newly adopted air of preteen sophistication, but his smile betrayed his pleasure at our arrival. "Hey, Grandma. Hey, Mr. Marcus. Dad says to tell you dinner's almost ready and not to fill up on appetizers because Becky made, enough food for an army." The house, when we entered, hummed with the controlled chaos of family gathering. Delicious. Aromas wafting from the kitchen, football commentary emanating from the living room television, Becky's parents chatting with neighbors I recognized from the old neighborhood. Becky emerged from the kitchen, cheeks flushed and an apron protecting her holiday outfit, looking simultaneously stressed and triumphant. "Eleanor! Marcus! Welcome!" She greeted us, accepting the flowers with genuine appreciation. "These are gorgeous. They'll look perfect on the table." The warmth of her welcome, so different from the strained politeness of our early interactions after my move, suggested that healing had continued in my absence. Tom appeared behind her, casually elegant in a button-down shirt and slacks, looking more relaxed in his own home than he ever had in mine. "You made it," he said, embracing me briefly before shaking Marcus's hand. "Come in. Get comfortable. We've finally figured out the thermostat in this place, so it should be bearable in the living room now." As we moved through the house, I noted all the small ways they'd made it their own in just a few months. Family photographs arranged on the stairway wall, new curtains framing the dining room windows, toys neatly corralled in baskets beside, the sofa. It felt lived in, personal, authentically theirs in a way the old house never quite had. "Your home looks wonderful," I told Tom sincerely. "You've done so much with it already." "Thanks," he replied, glancing around with evident pride. "It's smaller than what we had before, but honestly, it fits us better. And we don't have to worry about maintaining all that extra space we weren't really using." The observation, delivered without apparent irony, nearly made me laugh. How long had I tried to maintain all that extra space they'd claimed in my home, space that had overflowed with their possessions while I was tucked away in the basement? But the moment for such recriminations had passed. We were finding a new equilibrium, all of us. Dinner itself was a revelation. Not because of the food, though Becky had indeed produced a respectable feast, but because of my place within the Gia. Celebration. For the first time in decades, I sat at a Thanksgiving table without having orchestrated every detail of the meal. For the first time, I was served rather than serving, included in conversation rather than catching snippets while ferrying dishes back and forth from the kitchen. Seated between Marcus and Noah, with Lily directly across from me, I found myself fully present in a way I'd rarely experienced during family gatherings. I tasted each dish as it came, noticing flavors and textures. I listened to stories and contributed my own. I laughed at jokes without one ear tuned to the timer in the kitchen. "Grandma, are you going to enter your paintings in the big art show?" Lily asked as dessert was served, her question momentarily silencing other conversations around the table. "What art show is this?" Tom asked, looking between us curiously. "There's a regional senior arts showcase in the spring," I explained, somewhat embarrassed by the sudden attention. "My watercolor instructor suggested I might consider entering, but I haven't decided yet." "You absolutely should," Becky chimed in with unexpected enthusiasm. "I still have that card you painted for my birthday last month on my dresser. It's beautiful." "I didn't realize you were painting again," Tom said, his expression thoughtful. "You haven't done that since." "Well, since before I was born, I think." "I've been taking classes at Lakeshore Village," I explained. "Just for fun, really. Something to fill the time." "It's more than that," Marcus interjected gently. "Eleanor has genuine talent. You should see how the light comes through her work. There's a translucence that captures exactly how the lake looks in different seasons." The pride in his voice made me blush like a schoolgirl, but it was Tom's next words that truly caught me off guard. "You know, I still have that watercolor landscape you painted for Dad on their 10th anniversary, he said. "The one of the cabin where you honeymooned. It's in my office now. I always loved that painting, the way you captured the mist coming off the lake in the morning." I stared at him, momentarily speechless. I'd assumed that painting, like so many other personal items, had been discarded or packed away during the basement transition. The knowledge that Tom had valued it enough to keep it, to display it in his workplace, touched something deep within me. "I'd love to see your new work, Mom," he continued into my silence. "Maybe next time we visit Lakeshore Village?" "I'd like that," I managed, emotion making my voice slightly unsteady. As the evening continued, I found myself observing the gathering with a strange sense of detachment, as if I could simultaneously participate in the moment and witness it from outside. Here we all were, my son and his wife, now genuine hosts, in their own home. My grandchildren growing and changing by the day. Becky's parents, aging but still vital. Marcus, whose presence in my life would have been unimaginable a year ago. And me, transformed from basement grandmother to autonomous woman with a life of her own. We had come through fire, all of us, and emerged on the other side, not unscathed, perhaps, but intact. Different, but whole. Later, as Marcus drove us back to Lakeshore Village through the quiet evening streets, I shared this observation with him. "Do you think true resolution ever comes in real life?" I wondered aloud. Or, is it always just continuing adaptation? He considered the question seriously, as he did most things. I think resolution isn't an endpoint so much as a reconciliation, he said finally. Not everything gets tied up neatly with a bow, but we find ways to incorporate difficult experiences into our ongoing story. That makes sense, I nodded, watching shadows play across his profile as we passed beneath streetlights. I don't think Tom and I will ever completely resolve what happened with the house and the basement. But we're finding a way forward that honors who we both are now. That's all anyone can really ask for, he said, reaching across to take my hand. The ability to move forward with truth and dignity. Truth and dignity. The words resonated deeply. Wasn't that what I'd been seeking all along? Not revenge for being relegated to the basement, not punishment for those who had taken me for granted, but simply the space to live with truth and dignity. The holidays continued to unfold with new patterns and rhythms. Christmas at Lakeshore. Village brought community celebrations that I participated in with growing confidence, helping to decorate the clubhouse, joining the makeshift choir for caroling, attending the New Year's Eve dance where Marcus and I welcomed midnight with a kiss that felt both new and familiar. Tom and Becky invited me for Christmas dinner, which I attended happily, bringing Marcus, and contributing a dessert, rather than orchestrating the entire meal. We exchanged thoughtful gifts, books chosen with genuine consideration of the recipient's interests, handmade items that represented time and care rather than obligation, experiences to be shared rather than objects to be possessed. As winter deepened, I began preparing in earnest for the Senior Arts Showcase, selecting and refining pieces under my instructor's guidance. To my surprise, Tom asked if he could attend the exhibition opening in March. Of course, I told him, touched by his interest. Though I should warn you, it's not exactly the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Doesn't matter, he replied. I want to support your work, Mom. I should have done that a long time ago. When the showcase finally arrived, I found myself surrounded by a small but meaningful entourage. Marcus, elegant and proud by my side. Tom and Becky, who had arranged childcare to attend the adults-only event. Helen and several other retired teachers who made the drive specifically to see my work. Margaret and other friends from Lakeshore Village who arrived en masse to show their support. Standing in the gallery space, surrounded by these people who valued not just what I did for them, but who I was in myself, I experienced a moment of perfect clarity. This feeling of being seen and appreciated for my authentic self, was what I had been missing during those basement days. Not merely physical space or independence, but recognition of my personhood. Your Lake series is getting a lot of attention, Marcus murmured, returning from a circuit of the room. The curator mentioned that a restaurant owner is interested in purchasing several pieces for their dining room. The idea that someone might want to pay for my art, might find value in these expressions of my vision, was still difficult to fathom. Yet as the evening progressed, it became clear that Marcus wasn't exaggerating. 2 of my paintings sold before the night was over, small red dots appearing beside their placards like badges of validation. I'm proud of you, Mom, Tom said quietly as the event wound down, the 2 of us standing before my watercolor of dawn, breaking over the lake. For this, yes, but for everything else too. For having the courage to make a change when most people would have just settled. Thank you, I replied, hearing the genuine admiration in his voice. That means more than you know. As spring blossomed fully around Lakeshore Village, bringing with it the first anniversary of my move, I found myself reflecting often on the journey that had brought me here. The basement episode, which had once loomed so large in my consciousness, had receded into proper perspective, a painful but ultimately catalytic chapter in a much larger story. Marcus and I had settled into a comfortable rhythm, maintaining our separate condos but sharing much of our daily lives. We traveled occasionally, weekend trips to art galleries in nearby cities, a longer excursion to the coast where we walked beaches and collected shells like children. We discussed the future in pragmatic terms, healthcare directives, financial arrangements, the practical considerations of aging, but also with an openness to continued growth and discovery. My relationship with Tom and his family had found a new equilibrium as well. I visited their home regularly but briefly, on my own schedule. They came to Lakeshore Village for Sunday brunches and special occasions. The grandchildren spent one weekend a month with me, an arrangement that allowed for genuine connection without exhaustion on either side. Most significantly, I continued to paint, my work evolving as I experimented with techniques and subjects. The lake remained my primary muse, its changing moods and seasons offering endless inspiration, but I ventured into other themes as well: botanical studies, architectural details from around the village, occasionally even portraits of fellow residents. One evening in late April, as Marcus and I shared dinner on my balcony, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and rose, he posed an unexpected question. "Do you ever regret it? Selling the house, I mean. Starting over at our age." I considered carefully before answering, knowing he deserved my complete honesty. "No," I said finally. "I miss certain things about the old house, the cherry tree Robert and I planted, the marks on the kitchen doorframe where we measured Tom's height each year, the particular way light came through the front windows in the afternoon. But those are memories, not regrets." He nodded, understanding the distinction. "And the fresh start? Was it worth the upheaval?" "Absolutely," I replied without hesitation. Moving to the basement was painful, yes, but it forced me to confront how much I'd allowed myself to be diminished over the years. Without that wake-up call, I might never have found my way back to myself, or to you, for that matter. He smiled. At that, reaching across the table to take my hand. "Then I suppose I owe Tom and Becky my gratitude. Their thoughtlessness led you straight to me." "Life does have its strange compensations," I agreed, returning his smile. As darkness settled fully around us, the first stars appearing in the deepening blue above, I felt a profound sense of rightness, with my choices, with my current circumstances, with the woman I had become through this unexpected journey. The basement grandmother was gone forever, replaced by someone stronger and more complete. Eleanor Martinez, artist and author of her own life, had emerged from those underground days into full, glorious sunlight, proving that it's never too late to step out of the shadows and claim your place in the world. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.